Hello, Perfume Nation. I've been working through the comments on several videos that I posted on Perfume Addiction, and the most recent one where I give in the Perfume Nation episode roster, where I talk about 10 sort of scientifically backed up tips on how to restructure and interact with perfumes and this whole world of social media that's built around them, so you don't have to quit cold turkey. The cold turkey method, first of all, doesn't work for all people. Second of all, in terms of you not relapsing or not nosediving into depression, because addiction to anything, even if it's a soft addiction to video games or shopping of any kind, including perfumes, addiction to reading, addiction to podcasts, many of those would be considered just hobbies and soft activities that not necessarily damage your health. However, several people wrote to me that they got in debt because they started buying perfumes. They would buy perfumes based on blogger recommendations regularly. They struggled not to place new orders every 3 days. That's very common, that people would not go a week without placing an order online. And when you place an order online, in order to get to free shipping or use some kind of discount code, or if you're already at that point, within a week you'll consume at least 10 videos related to this interest, people would buy at least three bottles. And imagine every week you take it to the stretch of 2 years, you pretty much if it's $100 a piece, take it or leave it, probably more than that, it's going to be a very considerable expense in your life. And it spans beyond the actual dollar amount that you paid. You have also paid in hours upon hours upon hours of consuming the content, window shopping, stacking or looking for options of the same perfume on used websites, Mercari, on gray markets, on shopping platforms, eBay, Amazon, you name it, on perfume houses in different department stores. Just even if you're chasing one particular fragrance, it can easily take half of your week to just accumulate all the reviews, comparison, what it's similar to. And when we start the game with dupes, that's just an endless vortex that can suck up not only your money, but your time and your mental capacity to do anything else, to be engaged in other activities with other people. And people get so addicted to that cycle of chasing the next hit, and sometimes take it to ultimate pipe dream that exists in every addictive world, to my knowledge, is the ultimate trip when it comes to drugs, the ultimate festival when it comes to people who are event hopping and also get into debt, believe it or not, when they're addicted to going to big festivals. When it comes to shopping, like I have heard this signature, like the perfume to beat all other perfumes. That is a thing, especially if you notice as you start thinking in those extreme terms that there is one perfume that it's just gonna change your life. This the one. Once we start thinking in that categories, then you know you got a problem. That's one of the markers that separates hobby from addiction, because that chase for the one, it can be love addiction, it can manifest in many areas of life, but that's one of those patterns, thinking of some kind of ultimate pleasure, that ultimate thing, ultimate person, ultimate perfume, ultimate purse, ultimate vacation, ultimate house, ultimate job, ultimate book, ultimate something, that will be it. The problem is that is truly a pipe dream. And by that I mean that does not exist on earth. That concept doesn't manifest itself in real life of humans. because we as humans are constantly surrounded by change and are changing with respect to that change. That even if you found something exceptional when you were 15, that might not be the same thing that you find as exceptional and as the ultimate it when you're age 30, 40, and even in 2 months. We don't have to jump through decades. And also, we are not black and white, and we can like this for this aspect, and like A for this aspect, B for that aspect. And not only all of that changes, is always a multitude. And something that I keep trying to drill into all of the conversations that I have with other influencers or people in the community is that this cold turkey method, when people jump straight to aesthetic minimalism, I find to be just as unhealthy, because it has the same all or nothing, black and white type of quality that brings something to its extreme end. Extreme minimalism to me is addictive and OCD as extreme shopping addiction. Just to like test my theory, I've been looking at some of the channels and accounts on Instagram of people who were really into perfumes, but at some point hashtag themselves as shopping addiction or fragrance addiction. And I just looked at how did their contents change, how did their thoughts change. And I noticed that the most kind of stacked ranked likely scenarios of what happens to people, at least if they made themselves publicly visible at some point with their hobby, with their interest, is most likely one, they'll just stop posting. That's usually what cold turkey method gets you. And I guess in cases with hardcore drugs or gambling or some extreme activities that can kill you, it's probably a good thing. However, when it comes to softer coping mechanisms, and we can go more into what those coping mechanisms are covering up, what they're hiding, but let's focus right on the question at hand, the perfume addiction or collecting addiction. As I know, many people who collect perfumes tend to kind of roll from one frenzy, kind of collecting or being into one thing to another, and usually perfumes is not their first rodeo. For me, all of the above is true. I've tried quitting cold turkey. I've done it many times on many aspects of my life. I've been collecting, so to speak, or getting really, really into something and exploding the size of that thing in my life in a physical, mental, emotional sense. I didn't want to just keep repeating the same cycle. And I didn't want to quit my love for olfaction cold turkey. This is how I came up with the recent episode and Perfume Nation podcast, which is 10 tips of how to help with perfume addiction, and should be kind of prefaced so you don't quit this world altogether. It was very important condition for me. I wanted to be functional, enjoy this interest without completely collapsing it to nothing. And what I confirmed again, more often than not, people who develop excess, who kind of lean toward the darker side of this interest, of this hobby, usually quit cold turkey. They have to completely disengage. They stop posting. They change the topic of their channel, and more often than not, I find the same obsessive compulsive tendency. If they have a new topic, let's say it's decluttering, that it becomes extreme decluttering, then it's all about, I think one channel that I found really tender, beautifully structured content, and yet it was from this excess to like only 5, only 3 of each. And then it's just this compulsive activity when you get rid of everything accept those 5, 3/10 items. And at some point, it loses any functional or meaningful purpose. Sometimes you do want to have less than 5 or more than 5. 5 is an arbitrary number. So clinging to these harsh rules and making them your new identity and your way of living, to me, does not really solve the problem. It doesn't retrain your brain. It doesn't really save you from the next thing, from the next cycle. But then it might be not addiction, but you'll constantly be cleaning or constantly restructuring or rearranging your drawers. Or you will want to become an ideal mom or an ideal golfer, yada yada yada. Like you might become obsessed with bodybuilding. Anything can come to replace what you have if you don't develop mold and kind of evolve your neural connections. And in the tips that I constructed as a healing protocol, it aims to rewire, to change your reaction times and the type of cascades that you go down to when you get triggered. And now maybe let's peel off and look a little bit deeper. We get triggered because of, I would say, largely 2-3 big chunks of reasons. Everything else is somewhat derivative. First and foremost, I think we should cut ourselves a lot of slack because OCD or obsessive behaviors and addictive behaviors are partly genetic or epigenetic. If you find yourself in endless cycles, cut yourself some slack. Like that's your thing. That's what a much older friend of mine used to say, that everybody, Maria, if you're lucky enough to live long enough, everybody will discover a thing they have to manage. Chronic illnesses, chronic family drama, chronic problems, mental, emotional, intellectual, everybody's got a thing. So if you know that this is your thing, that's just your thing. It's not what people want to hear, but I find it somewhat soothing, because if that's the only thing I have to manage, I'm fine with that. There are way worse things to manage, and there are way worse obsessive behaviors and their consequences that do happen in people's lives. So if you find yourself in that spot, don't eat yourself. Cut yourself some slack. You might be coming from the background where your brain was formed, that there's nothing you can do in terms of just eradicate it altogether, but you can become the best manager in the world in this aspect. And the second one is, how do we structure our environment in the now? Environment, there are different studies that kind of hit on different things. I'm going to sort of round it all up and say roughly, you look at different data points, over half to 70%, that's a famous quote, environment shapes our behavior. It is very critically important. This is why so many tips that I have in that episode are about developing routines, processes, developing kind of mental schemas. This is how I'm going to think about it. This is the routine or ceremony I'm going to follow. This is how I'm going to structure my subscriptions. This is what I'm going to do or not to do. If you're trying to curb spending, then eventually most people will replace it with excessive window shopping. So you just spend endless amount of time either looking things, smelling things, shopping for deals, excessive, or how it's called, oversampling. Excessive sampling of decants is that yet another kind of a softer step back. So you're not really limiting your scattered attention when it comes to fragrances, but you're limiting the amount of money that you spend and storage on full-size bottles. All of those are good steps, mind you, they are temporary, and we should consider this as a one at a time progression. And as we're going through that, there is initial period of discomfort, then you should allow yourself to feel victorious. Let's say if you replace blind buying with potentially pretty robust or maybe even excessive decant purchases, at first you feel like such a loss. I'm not holding a full-size bottle. This is not the same. But then you keep thinking about it and you keep wearing them. And I would also heavily recommend getting social support in your life, that people will softly reinforce your decision and maybe sniff perfumes with you and help you kind of reinforce the fact that it is about smelling it. It's not about storing it. It's not about owning it. All of these things started because you were fascinated by how it makes you feel and how it gets processed by your brain and what it reminds you of. And then you went online and you read other people's reviews and comments on different websites. And it's like, interesting. Like 90% find it's milky or creamy, but to me it's kind of rancid and this and that, and that makes me feel nauseous. And I found my trope of people who feel the same way. Isn't that amazing? All of that, if it has a social component, will help you to solidify the replacement step to achieve new normal. And then eventually it's worth again reconsidering, like, do I really need 10 decants a month? You start softly questioning, what are those 10 decants for? And then you might realize, well, actually it might be more fun and meaningful if I had brunch with friends or with somebody who I really enjoy spending time with, and on the way to it or from it, we stopped by a niche fragrance corner and we just sprayed it, just sampled it. I can take the card with me. I don't even have to buy a decant. I can spray it on me. I can spray it on the card, write some notes, have brunch, and then smell it again, post maybe on social media, or just discuss what I think. And that is enough. I know the perfume industry, people who are making money from selling decants or selling full-size bottles are probably now just cursing me officially. But I genuinely believe that making a business out of people's misery, gaming companies, anyone, is unethical, and those are not the financial resources that I think are worth protecting in the business at large. So I will continue to fight against fragrance addiction and empower people who actually want to enjoy perfumes. I think we need more people who know perfumes, understand them, know the history, are genuinely engaged in the perfume community, engaged with brands, and engaged with events. I would really love that instead of overselling bottles, we as an overall global community started selling and engaging people in events, perfume related events, where they can get together. And sure, there will be some perfume costs if you want to do sampling events or blind testing events, or want to introduce your customers to 3 types of rose ingredients and why does a rose perfume smell a very different way anytime you go to a store and ask for a rose-centric perfume. Why? There are so, like you can have a botany discussion and then how many sorts of roses actually exist, or gardenias or magnolias, and say like, well, in this part of the world they smell this way, and here is kind of a specialized limited edition sampler that we created. This is, I don't know, South Carolina magnolia for you. We try to authentically reproduce what the flower would smell like. Or if you want to talk about shippers, like a workshop on shippers, history, what are they made of? What are the regulations of IFRA changed in the way we perceive shippers as an aromatic profile? I think it would be much more lucrative, better for everyone involved, and more ethical if consumers and brands spend their money and attention into making it a shared communal smell education and smell experiencing environment, rather than commodify everything into alcohol liquids that we have to buy. Otherwise, the industry collapses. Then it's a Nash equilibrium. Nobody can win. So I am very optimistic about that, with certain level of creativity and investment from the side of big businesses and big sponsors of the perfume industry, we can create the momentum. And I think COVID years should only make this more of a poignant and much needed type of business activities, where brands, department stores, and all of the agents, including decanting companies, can make money, and consumers can benefit from spending their dollars on perfume related events, be them sampling, educational, communal, and things of that nature. I do believe it can be a win-win situation, and it's not a loss-loss type of situation. This is why I keep creating this content, and I keep nudging people toward watching Perfume Nation podcast, because one of the coping mechanisms that a lot of people are missing out on is, if you're stuck, develop study skills. Now more than ever, in the inflection point with AI tools, we need to lean into what we are as humans are best at, which is adaptivity, our ability to adapt and learn. Instead of chasing next discount or free shipping code, or the biggest sampler you can buy for X amount of money, learn. I encourage companies to figure out a monetization strategy of how to make learning a mutually beneficial and lucrative activity. Because I go from brand to brand sometimes to their social media, it's either absent or non-existent. I reach out to a brand if I want to do a brand house review, asking them for any educational materials. So maybe it would be really cool if brands were more collaborative with influencers and provided us with more than a flaccid, regurgitated marketing terms, kind of, like 5-paragraph thing, where a new release is described as refreshing, soothing, gourmand, green, fresh, bitter, for independent, soft, smart, vivacious, flirtatious, reckless, young, mature. You see, like that's the information that I most often get from various platforms and perfume companies, while it would be really cool if all of us had more access into, this perfume took us just a year to develop. It was such an instant hit. We knew we were up to something, and we were lucky enough to collaborate with this perfumer who, and here is the interview, and obviously we all like to learn stories. And sometimes stories can be technological. Such and such captive became available and we jumped on it because we knew it was a really cool ingredient that we wanted to work with. And maybe that's why we knew we had to create a scent that was based on that note or that accord very quickly, yet we didn't want to sacrifice originality or quality. We wanted to fit with our perfume authenticity. That's a story. That's a story everyone wants to know while we're sniffing the sample. Correct me if I'm wrong, but who wants to hear these done over, nonsensical, full of adjective stories that talk about these independent, soft, romantic, vivacious, smart, elusive women? It's as primal as this identity politics is. I understand where it's coming from. Once it's been done about 100,000 times, it loses any meaning. So I would love for all of us to seek more rich information, to demand brands and releases to give us well-researched and interesting stories about the products. We want to see people involved in making those products, the technologists, the perfumers, maybe even the senior product manager who was shaping the whole brief and the whole process from the beginning to the end. Maybe in contrast, tell us about a story that this flanker we thought would be an easy win, and yet we kept working and working and working. And the way that we did that, we did a UX study or a blind study and this and that. People do want to know that. And I find that perfume industry is being so secretive for no good reason. Social media is owning this space, and influencers are owning the perfume education now. Why? Because how many people get accepted to a perfume school? How many perfume schools are out there? I'm not even talking about the perfume school track of becoming a flavor chemist or perfumer, even for the sake of marketing. The most accessible and helpful and user-friendly course I found recently was Sam Macer from YouTube. He's an independent perfumer, and he spent a lot of time compiling that information. If you're curious, I have a whole interview with him where we discuss the most common misunderstandings or myths about perfumery. We kind of like lift the veil of what perfumes are, how they're made, who are the perfumers, how this whole thing even works, and why it works the way it works. And he does go into things that you can learn from his course, which I'm a part of his community. I highly recommend that you take that. But how many options do we have out there? Not that many. Surprisingly, not that many. You go to an average perfume event and all you get is kind of these semi-fake smiles with the forcing function to buy a bottle. And where is it coming from? From a really absent monetization plan. Yeah, if the only outcome that can happen and the only income stream that can happen is selling a bottle that costs $30 to make all together for $300 and just giving people some nonsensical pink unicorn poop of a brief, of a marketing release for yet another sensual perfume for an independent, vibrant, sexy woman, yeah, then that's when it's going to end up. Nobody's happy. Brands struggle to sell the bottles. Consumers don't understand why were they invited to that event as a lamb for slaughter. All right, I'm going to wrap up this particular rant, but I'm just saying we do need a better, more robust, in all aspects, event industry in the perfume world. I just recently got denied access to one big flavor and scent conferences because they don't consider YouTube influencers real. It's 2024. I kid you not. With that call, please let me know what you think about this idea and whether it would benefit your life. In particular, I'm super curious. A lot of people in the comments mentioned that part of why it becomes so tailored toward just consumerism and buying bottles is because nobody in their life shares their interest. The only way they can participate, they feel, is by buying the bottle blindly, getting it shipped to their small town where they don't have any local events or even local stores where they can try things, and nobody to discuss them with other than, commenting on Instagram posts of influencers and things of that nature. If that's the case and you feel kind of isolated from easily accessible places and people who you could connect with and potentially swap decants and do this and that, would you be willing to incorporate larger perfume cons, like lavish, fun events into your vacation planning time or time of work life as a special thing that you would travel for? I find that it's an absolute jam when you get to go to one of those Comic Cons in niche communities. I've been to a few. Recently, one of the recent ones, I went to a biohacking conference, and it compares to nothing. 500 perfume bottles would not compare in the joy and the enrichment that I got in my life compared to having a meet and greet with perfume enthusiasts or having a shared decant swap. So I'm curious how many other people are open and are willing to invest into that idea if they were given an opportunity by, let's say, a company that has the means to invest and people to invest into organization of such an event. I know Exans so far is probably the most open perfume related or flavor related conference, I would say, in the world. A lot of those conferences are closed family picnics for people who work in the industry, for better probably, but I find it's a lot for worse. They seem very isolated from how the world works these days. If you try to listen to how they talk about AI, and here I am, I'm a published speech AI researcher, and nobody cares. It's really interesting. So I find that having those blended, pretty much like VidCons, blended perfume cons, or at least to start as a series of meets and greets, maybe in Macy's chains or things of that nature, would be worth it on both sides, on the sides of the company to invest money and on the sides of the person to buy the tickets and go meet people and learn something new, and also maybe get some swag as well from the brands. Let's go back a step when it comes to the progression and the coping protocols when it comes to addictive personality, obsessive compulsive behaviors, and perfume addiction in particular. One of the strongest arguments that I think worth kind of pinning your precious ass down and considering deeply is the fact that nature is absolutely not minimalistic. Nature is and that's what made us. Nature is by definition hedonistic system. The only pitfall of that system is that nature can afford, evolution at large, can afford to go through cycles of adversarial hedonistic explosion and exploration that's followed by collapse of sustainability and the results of exponential growth of anything. Bacteria, cancer, invasive plant species, invasive animals. All of that has happened. And it led to various cycles of collapses, dramatic, tragic collapses. Obviously, us as humanity, we don't want to collapse on ourselves, right? But I still think it's always helpful to live in the fundamentals of how we work. We are a product of nature that was shaped by so many forces, changing forces in environments on this planet. This planet, by the way it works, is hedonistic. It's part of our nature. I don't see it as anything to be ashamed of, trying to put under sturdy control or fight or eradicate whatsoever. This is why my system is called mindful hedonism. Hedonism is normal. This is how our planet works. But for us, as human species who don't want to go extinct, that so many animals or colonies of microbes that will overload, let's say, a tree or an animal and lead to their own extinction by depleting all the resources. We don't want to do that, right? Hence, mindful. We need to find soft, elastic boundaries and effective protocols and mechanisms, kind of schemas that can help us be hedonistic as we are by design, and yet remain sustainable, remain functional, remain robust in the changing environment. A lot of people, I think, since the word mindfulness comes from the world of yoga and meditation, there is much confusion about what I mean when I say that. When you say the word mindfulness, it can mean a variety of things. And by that, I don't mean meditation techniques per se, because the ultimate practice of meditation, more or less, is getting to the point of recognizing the absence, the void, the absence of narrative, the absence of center, in a way, annihilation of self often is the result of skillful meditation. And this is not what I am talking about. This is not what we need for this particular problem that we face as humanity. What I mean by mindful hedonism is a slowed down, therefore more controlled, more balanced reflection on point. So we're not trying to eradicate focus or say nothing matters. What is perfume? Perfume is nothing. I'm nothing. Nothing is really important. One is not better than the other. Everything is just appears. If you follow Sam Harris' common thread, or if you follow his waking up meditation practices, which I do too, this is not the point. Actually, in mindful hedonism, as I envision it as a philosophy for functional humans as we are, that are by design hedonistic, is ability to recognize speed with which you're moving, ability to recognize and record your surrounding and what else is happening. Even knowing that you're placing one order a week is a shocking realization for a lot of people. This is why I made 2 other videos when I just took you through how it was working for me, how it started, how many orders I was placing within 1 year, and how much money I spent. And they just see the snowball, you see the exponential explosion. And until I sat down and did that fun data analytics for my own behavior, a lot of things I didn't realize were there. And that's part of mindfulness, as I define it, is ability to slow down, incorporate context, derive and synthesize insights, and reflect on them. I would not even advocate, especially at the beginning, for any decisive action as get rid of it or this or that, keep one signature perfume or stop, or I do have those rules and I did share them, but I would not necessarily say that's the first thing you do. Ability to slow down, recognize, incorporate context, derive insights, and just reflect on them. You might say, like, I cannot control this, but now I see what's happening. Let's say it's $500 a week. I noticed that I started postponing paying my credit card bill in full. I also started using those precarious pay later schemes. And out of all of my old spending, let's say free cash, the frivolous spending the budget that I have, 80% of it goes to perfumes. And I decide I'm not ready to change anything. But now I know. That is the crucial point. To become aware. And in order to become aware, we need to have techniques that slow us down without sending us nosediving into depression. Fun fact. As part of exploring different techniques, I have done a 1.5 week information detox diet. I had some exceptions because I'm currently preparing for a long trip in Europe, and I was researching a topic for the podcast. But certain things I was allowed to consume, but I probably limited my screen time and any kind of social media time by 90% easily. Just cut it out for a week and a half. Cold turkey. Like, I was planning to do 100%, but I think here and there, and answering to messages and landing on Instagram feed when you try to do so still gives you that a little bit, like, things trickle down. And let me tell you, so many books, podcasts, thought leaders, influencers, you name it, will tell you that that's the thing to do. We should all do it. And I think it's a bad idea. I honestly do. If we're talking about people who are ADHD but don't suffer from anxiety, are not prone to depressions, are not going through some really challenging things, like medium to long term challenges in their life, maybe that will free them. They will recognize that they have 5+ hours a day to actually do the chores, complete the homework, make that phone call. That was the bonus that I discovered. I did start closing the loop on things that I was postponing for years. Like, good to know. I should attend to it eventually. I should really look into this. That did happen. But I know for certain now that cold turkey for people who have anxiety or have challenging life circumstances that cannot be solved with a phone call will be sent to the depths of never-ending despair if they do something like that. So I am going against 99% of advice that you'll find on wellness right now and say, like, I don't think that information diets are as healthy, as fruitful, and as good for you, at least in the short term, and even safe to do by yourself on a whim, as all of those doctors, experts, meditation gurus claim. For that, I would love if they actually followed their own advice and did a large study, not as controlled as the quiet meditation retreat where you're still surrounded by supportive systems and yada, yada, yada. But like, just let people keep drudging through their life as it is and remove all mild coping mechanisms and little positive nuggets they get through social media and podcasts, books, movies, and TV shows. At some point, and again, just a disclaimer, nothing horrific is happening in my life, but that just reveals how low was my baseline for happiness. At some point, I stopped doing even the chores, so that positive momentum of finishing the loop of things you were postponing, that stopped being effective. And my brain just started kind of turning off. So instead of watching a podcast, maybe having a few chuckles, because podcasters really try to make it entertaining as it is nourishing and thought-provoking. I really love the podcasting culture as it exists right now. There is something for everyone. And the quality of podcasts keeps rising up because it's a very competitive space. Having all of that taken away didn't lead me to writing a book that I've been saying I'll write for years now. I didn't envision an incredible content strategy for the YouTube channel or the Perfume Nation podcast. I didn't make 10 amazing new friends. I didn't all of a sudden become 10 times better circus performer. I didn't write a new review on some of the AI speech techniques as I was thinking and planning to do. None of that is usually promised to us by people who advocate for info diets. None of that happened. what happened, I did do some chores. I had absolutely horrific time for a week and a half. Horrific. And at the end, I would just kind of lay down and stare at the wall. And your brain goes either into daydreaming mode or just kind of like, you're just kind of not quite there. Some people start exercising excessively, so they injure themselves. So all in all, when it comes to some advice, when it comes to addiction, I find that to be counterproductive and rather poorly researched. If I was to recommend you any kind of info diet, I would recommend develop selective hearing, more like unsubscribing for excessively consumeristic channels, unsubscribing from, let's say, cleaning out the house of what gets into your eyes and brain. Just similar to the Perfume Addiction episode, maybe creating soft, elastic rules about just how much you engage with it. For example, you're allowed to listen to podcasts when you are waiting, when you're on public transport or driving long distance, but you're not allowed to do that before going to bed or if you have nothing to do. You have to do something and maybe supplement doing chores, doing dishes, or working out with that favorite entertainment. I think that's a much more humane way, and it also doesn't lead to pretty horrific dips in the mood. Along those lines, when we talk about mindful hedonism when it comes to fragrance addiction, I find it's useful to dedicate, almost schedule if you can, long quiet sessions of playing with your collection, to really think deeply about how you want to store things, where, cleaning the space, arranging things just so, and don't worry about having one and done type of ceremony, or like this is going to be stored, this is what's going to be. More like this is the time I engage with my garden of perfumes. Rearrange them week over week if you feel like it. It's like, well, this one I actually been using quite a lot and I feel like I'm ready to put it in the back a little bit. Maybe we're gonna change this. Actually, I like these by colors that are better here. So having those long, easy, relaxing, flowy sessions with it, engaging with the product of your interest. I would highly recommend you at least try to do it as instead of, let's say, watching Netflix or consuming some other informational social media, or vice versa, window shopping, seeing what's on sale or what kind of codes are out there, what kind of new releases, to dedicating that time. It's like, yes, if I am going to engage 2 hours daily with my interest, for half an hour, I'm going to read a book or watch an educational podcast. And I got you covered there, hopefully. And there will be more coming soon. I want to spray something maybe for comparison or dive deeper into perfume that I don't feel quite I understand. Or I'm going to go and literally play with what I have. I'm going to move them. I'm going to sniff this, sniff that, think, what does it remind me of? I'm going to do a quick search. It's like, I forgot. That's the note. What is it that I'm smelling? I can't quite tell. To have that as part of your allocated budget. So many people thank me for giving that advice. It's obvious thing to do. But considering it is, I have 2 hours, 3 hours a day that I dedicate to my love for perfumery. I am allowed to do it, just go at it, but how? What will go into those 2 hours? And you can shake it up. You don't have to always split those 2 hours daily the same way. A lot of comments were touching upon shifting from blind buying full-size bottles to decants. And I would say decants is a much more economical and compact and functional way to indulge in the hedonistic nature that we have. So if you have, let's say, 30 bottles and you already have some system in place, or 5 bottles, there's not much of a rearranging to do. Invest into the system of decants. Some people buy themselves a labeler or calligraph, do handwriting of labels for each decant. They arrange them in certain way and rearrange them. This is the day of the week jar. This is my spring, or maybe it's by alphabet. And every once in a while, shake things up, finish them, and have some kind of release ceremony when you finish them. This is why I installed the Serious Last Drops, which I do sincerely hope you enjoy, because this is the place where you can find reviews to all of the perfumes that I've ever tried. If you're ever curious about any particular perfume, you can search it in Last Drops. I do put a lot of time into creating the metadata with timestamps for every perfume I tried. And this is a very expensive adventure that I take on regularly. And at the end, I do have an accounting system, and I report every so often, every month and a half, 2 months. I report to myself and to you, how much perfume do I actually use? So that every single time when I think about buying 100 ml bottle, I have a very good idea what will it take to replace that bottle with something else. So you get a very nuanced and rich understanding, and it's not just a cognitive understanding. It eventually becomes visceral understanding of what it really takes to engage with this world of ever so exploding amount of releases that we're bombarded with, and what is it worth to you. I also know it's very hard transition for a lot of us who were brought up in poverty. I call spade a spade and pull it out there. There are people who were raised in the culture of volunteering, donations, giving away time, money, and energy, and good vibes. And a lot of us who were raised in the scarcity mindset, there is not enough things to go around for everyone. Physical possessions are the most precious ones because you never had them. And in certain small local communities, a more expensive bag could actually get you a better date. It's not untrue. We just have to reevaluate and settle ourselves, like, where are we now in our life? Is that still true? That showing this bottle in my stories might get me, I'm trying to think, what can it really get anyone? So can it get me anything beside the missing $200? Can it? When people think it can buy them love or attraction, it always makes me feel so uncomfortable, because that's not what attraction is made of. That's not how attraction builds. So it's worth looking back into our roots and seeing what shapes our value assignment, especially when it's compulsive. A lot of people who collect things, for example, they don't collect experiences. Some people are addicted to travel, addicted to festivals and concerts, and that can have its dark side. But those people tend to be from more, I dare say, financially stable families. Because being from poverty, I did not go to a rock festival till I was in my 30s. It was just not a thing. It was like, how many dollars? Are you crazy? This is jeans and bag and shoes and this and that. These are my groceries for so many weeks. That's how I thought. Like, people who grew up in poverty are more likely to get addicting to collecting expensive or many varieties of objects, because when you are in poverty, those objects are hard to come by, and they are these manifestations of better life that otherwise you don't have. That's also something else that you might retrospectively kind of look back on. It's like, where did this thing come from? Why am I collecting these physical tokens? Tokens of what? For some people, it might ring very true. If it does for you, please let me know in the comments down below. And to wrap it up, we've hit quite a few really cool problem and solution statements. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know. Share it with people who you think are like-minded and might enjoy and find this content valuable. Thank you so much for your time. And as you're listening to the outro, stretch your fingers, leave a comment, give a like, subscribe to the podcast and the channel on YouTube. That will make a real difference for me, and it's absolutely free of charge. So it's a win-win for both of us. Thank you so much for your time. I'll see you in the next episode.
In a world full of noise, find your voice. In the chaos, make your choice to support what you believe, to rejoice in the truth, in the real, not the ploy. Elevate the sources that enlighten your days, that bring value, deserve your praise. In the digital age's complex maze, support the channels that truly amaze. Like and subscribe, show your love for the content that fits like a glove. Every like, every sub pushes us above. Your support is what we dream. Your click, your view, it's a bridge uniting us. A support to our rich. In this journey we pledge to be legit. Your contribution, a flame keeping us lit. Donations, likes, they keep us tight. In this digital battle, our armor, our night.